Do you tend to be hard on yourself, judge yourself for things that don't go according to plan, and be very self-critical? A positive self-talk is crucial for both well-being and also high performance. So stay tuned for 5.5 ways to cultivate a positive self-talk. Hey there, thanks for tuning in again. I'm Ava, psychologist and head of content at Flow Lab. And with our mental fitness app, we want to bring more rewarding and productive flow states into the world with guided meditations tailored to your individual strengths and areas with potential for improvement. From research in the area of performance psychology, we know how important self-talk is for our performance and our well-being. It can motivate us to keep going or be the reason for your downfall. It can make you feel better, increase motivation and persistence, or it triggers negative emotions, make you lose your focus or stops you from engaging in an activity. Maybe you can think back to a recent challenge, something where you weren't so sure whether you would be able to master it. Which thoughts crossed your mind at that moment? How did you talk to yourself? Were there thoughts like, I can do this, just one step at a time? Or rather, lingering self-doubt like, what if I fail? Or I have no idea how I'm supposed to do that. Researchers found that negative self-talk was associated with losing. When we start overthinking and follow pessimistic thoughts, we'll also have more counterproductive emotions like anxiety. And it comes as no surprise that this will consume a lot of our resources, so we have less focus and energy left for the actual task. Imagine you're about to have a difficult conversation, maybe with your boss, your partner, a family member, or a business partner. If you focus on negative thoughts, such as, you don't stand a chance, they will pick you apart, or it's so embarrassing that I'm nervous again, hopefully they don't see my hands shaking. Chances are that you struggle to focus on the actual content during the conversation, are less mentally flexible, and perhaps trigger even more negative thoughts. Thinking positively in a performance situation, on the other hand, facilitates flow states and helps you to feel and to perform better. But it's not only about occasional challenges, it's also how you talk to yourself in mundane, everyday situations that can influence how confident, brave, or self-conscious you walk through life. What inner monologue do you notice when your alarm clock rings in the morning, when brushing your teeth, when deciding what to eat or to wear, or when sitting in front of your laptop at work? Our self-talk may be more subtle in these moments, but it can be very informative regarding the convictions we hold about ourselves, the benchmark we set to measure our performance or worth, limiting beliefs we have internalized over time, trigger points, or on the positive side, of course, also what we are proud of and what we like about ourselves. If you want to gain more insight into your self-talk and learn how to make it more positive and encouraging, stay tuned for 5.5 tips or mental imageries. Let's start with half a tip. It's half a tip because it's not directly about cultivating a positive self-talk yet, but about developing awareness about the way you talk to yourself in the first place. In the beginning, many people may think they don't talk to themselves. They don't have an inner monologue. When referring to self-talk, it's not necessarily about playing out entire conversations in our heads. It's how we interpret our experiences and the way we give feedback to ourselves. This can be verbally or just a stream of thoughts running through our head. Oftentimes, it's only small statements, words, thoughts addressed to ourselves we say or think, maybe a come on, or I'm such an idiot, or also an ironic well done. Try to become more aware of these tiny comments. What do you say before, during, and after challenges for both good and poor performances? In which situations in your daily life do you talk more often to yourself? Do your thoughts mainly circle around how you feel or perhaps how others might feel about you? And which topics come up repeatedly? If you like, take out your journal and answer questions like these in the evening to end the day. The more regularly you take the time to reflect on your self-talk, the more you'll identify patterns and will be able to deliberately counteract negative self-talk. Feel free to train exactly that with our flow session Listen in the training area of Optimism in the Flow Lab app. The actual tip number 1 involves a perspective shift that can help you cope with self-criticism, ruminations, or anxiety. Imagine that it's not you who is in that situation, but a person close to you. How would you react when you hear about their concerns? Which advice would you give to them? Would you react with the same tone of voice as you would talk to yourself? Or would you be more compassionate, more encouraging and comforting? Really try to visualize that situation in your mind's eye. And once you've internalized this perspective, it may become easier and easier to become your own best friend, to find the same encouraging words and to speak to yourself in a compassionate way. You'll see that it will be a lot easier to let go of mistakes, cope with difficult challenges ahead, or stop overthinking when you know that you'll always have your back. Self-compassion, in fact, has been found to correlate negatively with depression, anxiety, and rumination, while correlating positively with a stable self-worth and more optimism and life satisfaction. If you like, you can do this mental imagery with our flow session Best Friend. You'll find it in the training area of Optimism in the Flow Lab app. The next one is a visualization tool. Most of the time when stress is high, we only pay attention to the inner critic, that voice inside your head that is fantastic at pointing out the negative in each situation, making us more self-critical and anxious. But what if there's another voice inside you, a person cheering you on, reminding you of all the strengths and resources you have? You can train to listen to that supportive voice that acts as a counterbalance to the inner critic. For example, close your eyes and take a few minutes to imagine the things you're most afraid of in all its tiny details, but with people spurring you on until you eventually master the situation. Which thoughts and emotions come up when you listen to the encouraging words? The exercise can be a great preparation for specific performance situations, public speaking, a sports match, a concert, or something else where you can benefit from a personal cheerleader. The more often you train that, the easier it will get to silence the critical voice and turn up the volume of the supportive voice. For a guided version of this exercise, check out the flow session Pep Self-Talk, again in the training area of Optimism. This one goes a little bit deeper. We want to explore the roots of the critical voice inside you, because what this voice is telling us is often based on what we've learned over the course of our life. It brings up all the things our parents taught us, the things we should or shouldn't do. It reminds us of social norms that help us get on well in society, or perhaps brings to mind the situations where we were embarrassed or made a mistake so we can make sure they don't happen in the future again. This doesn't mean that what this voice is telling us is necessarily true. But knowing this can help us to understand that this voice can function as some kind of protective mechanism. So another approach to encounter your inner critic is not to mute it, but to pay attention to it and give it a face. If this voice was a real person, who would you see? Picture their appearance, their posture, their gestures, and facial expressions. Is this person familiar to you? Are you surprised to see that person? Who you see can also differ from context to context, so it's an exercise worth doing multiple times. And if you have a clearer picture of who this voice belongs to, perhaps you can see their vulnerability, no matter if they just want to protect you and therefore say these things, or whether they are stuck in their own limiting beliefs and fears. And it's up to you how you want to react, what you want to respond. Maybe you could say something like, "Thanks, I appreciate your concern, but I got this." This way, you can take away their power and deliberately focus your attention elsewhere. Of course, we have a flow session for this exercise too, called Calling Names, also in the area of optimism. By now, you're probably a master in mental imagery, so the next one will come easy for you. When the self-doubt machine runs at full speed, we're often quite emotional too. In order to bring some daylight between you and these thoughts and not get lost in your emotions, it can help to imagine your inner monologue as a conversation between two strangers on the street. Imagine that you're just a passenger walking by, taking notice of the argument between these two people. One person is assaulting the other, perhaps blaming them for mistakes, pointing out their weak spots and making them feel bad about themselves. How's the other reacting? Do they fight back? Do they shy away and say nothing? And as you watch them fight, you might realize how absurd the situation is. Perhaps how the offender doesn't respect any boundaries, or that you wish the other reacted differently. And bringing it back to real life, from this healthy distance, you might even find a few questions that you can ask yourself to evaluate whether the criticism is worth listening to or not, such as, what evidence is there that this is really true? And even if it's true, is it helpful? Have a go at the flow session Strangely Familiar for a guided version and learn to attach less importance on what the self-critical part within you has to say. Fifth and final imagery is a more playful approach. When blinded by the constant chatter of the inner critic, it can seem impossible to retain a feeling of ease. But in order to put things into perspective, it can be exactly that, not taking things too seriously that triggers the plot twist. So the final approach I'd like to discuss today is to turn the critical voice into ridicule. Perhaps you'd like to imagine it as a funny voice or a silly movie character, a voice on helium, maybe a clumsy one, always saying in between, or talking so slowly that it becomes quite tiring. How do your emotions change when imagining everything that this voice says with a humorous spin? Perhaps their comments come across less threatening. Maybe you feel more in control and confident to set the agenda. Generally, so-called benign humor, so humor that doesn't come at the expense of anyone, has been deemed a protective factor against stress, anxiety, and self-criticism. So why not train that with our flow session Jokes on You, another optimism session in the Flow Lab app. Let me know in the comment section which approach is your favorite one. Other than that, leave a thumbs up if you liked it and make sure to hit the subscribe button. Keep it up and see you next time.